All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, let's bring in Katherine Mangu-Ward, Reason Magazine Managing Editor. Katherine, thanks for joining us this morning. Would love to get your take because we are all talking about it all morning. Unbelievable. You know, Donald Trump now going after Dr. Carson because he's beaten him in some polls.
I love it that his main point against Carson is essentially, I don't know about that guy, right? I mean, I think this shows that actually Jeb Bush is right. Like, we should be talking about policy. We should be talking about plans for the upcoming presidency that one of these guys will hold. We are so far from that. It's frankly a little comical.
Well, I mean, so what do you make of that, though? Still, despite what you're saying, Donald Trump has been effective at painting Jeb Bush as this low-energy guy. Despite what people want to say, it kind of stuck. Is that going to stick with Dr. Ben Carson?
You know, I think certainly that reputation is already there. That's one reason Trump is so effective. He does play on these sort of very superficial takes that people already have on the other candidates. At the same time, I like a little bit of mellow in my presidents. You know, I prefer a guy that's like, let me just sit down and think about it for a minute. And, I don't see that in Trump.
Katherine, you're right. The conversation has been superficial, and we're waiting for the policy discussion. But if you step back from this, what we're seeing, even with Carson in first place in Iowa, is that the outsider is still in command of the Republican race. The outsider, the non-establishment candidate. And what Trump is saying is that, against Carson, is that he's not the business guy. He's not the deal maker that you need to have in that office. In other words, there's behind all of the shtick, there is some substance being discussed there. Outsider, non-establishment, you need a business guy in the role who's going to be able to deal with the Chinese.
You know, I'm sympathetic to that. At the same time, I think the American people, and to some extent, at least later in the game, Republican voters, in the end, couldn't get excited about Mitt Romney, who is also a business guy in a very, very different mold, admittedly. And I think, we're absolutely seeing the GOP trying to reorient itself. Frankly, I'm taking a lot of hope from the way the speaker's race seems to be going. The sort of Paul Ryan as quasi-outsider who has also got some real policy chops. That's a model I'd like to see show up in the actual presidential race.
Underline the quasi, right? Because, he is...
Sure. Well, none of them are real outsiders. They're all running for president.
Yeah, he's firmly of the House establishment, Paul Ryan is. All right, so how do you see this playing out over the next several months before the convention? Does the Republican committee, does the Republican machinery galvanize around an establishment candidate, or does it accept the fact that there's an outsider, best go with the outsider, best bet against Hillary Clinton?
You know, I wish I had the secret crystal ball into the Republican establishment's playbook. I still don't think it's likely that we're going to wind up with Trump as the nominee. I think Carson is even less likely. I do think eventually we will wind up with someone who at least has one or two policy proposals to bring to the table. Maybe it's Rubio, maybe it's Bush, I don't know. But I hold out hope that we will not wind up with Trump.
I just have to play devil's advocate there because Donald Trump really brought the immigration conversation to the table, despite that even being any sort of plan by the GOP. I mean, didn't he sort of champion that?
You know, immigration has been on the table forever, and it's true that, he brought it into the earlier phase of the primary, which is certainly maybe wasn't the plan. Doesn't mean we weren't going to talk immigration. Doesn't mean his plan is particularly, better thought out or resonates better.
Well, I just had to clarify because he
has
has been talking policy, maybe not in a conventional way.
Just that one thing. And then he has a tax policy, which is basically Jeb Bush light. I wanted to point out, though, the reason that people are attracted to these candidates is because in the last 8 years, the two candidates the Republicans put up did nothing and lost. And Mitt Romney, although he was a businessman, he didn't really run on being a businessman. It was like he tried to hide the fact that he had wealth. He kind of didn't really embrace the fact that he ran this giant private equity company. Trump's the opposite.
And I actually do wonder if Romney is watching Trump now and thinking, maybe that was the wrong approach. Maybe he should have run as a businessman.
And it's part of it. You want them to be themselves, and I think it's part of Mitt Romney's nature and his family's nature that he wasn't going to be a braggart about how much money he had, but it was like he was trying to. Well, he was a little ashamed of it, and that does not connect with people. Not people in the Republican Party. It does not.
All right. Well, Katherine, we appreciate you joining us and giving your insights on the race. Katherine Mangu-Ward.
Thank you.
All right. Well.